Villains. Sometimes we think we know what they're plotting, but sometimes we're wrong. When it comes to tricks and illusions, after all, villains tend to be the masters. Starting off with a very unexpected twist, none of us were entirely sure if Catwoman and Batman were ever going to be allowed to end up together permanently in the main continuity. But when the wedding of the two characters was announced, that seemed exactly what we would actually be getting, which we were pretty hyped about. Of course, in the end, Selena did decide to play the role of runaway bride and break off the engagement, leaving a letter for Bruce. But while that was also surprising, the real twist was actually in finding out that Catwoman ditching Batman at the altar was all a part of a larger plan belonging to Bane. And even worse, Holly Robinson, Selena's good friend, was actually in on this plot. Bane had returned to Gotham, planning this time to break Batman's mind and his heart instead of just his body. Next up, this has to be one of the most shocking twists of all time in the comics, and it comes to us from Marvel. What twist surprised you the most? See if you can guess what this next one I'm about to share is. Hint, it's from Marvel. That's what you know. Put those guesses in the comments now. Let me know your thoughts as well. The Thunderbolts were a team that upon their first appearance were shrouded in mystery. They appeared to be a team of largely unknown heroes who were being set up to become a new premier superhero team in Marvel Comics, kind of akin to the Avengers. Somehow Marvel managed to keep the truth of their identity a secret until the release of their very first issue. In Thunderbolts issue number 1, at the very end it's actually revealed that this team of new heroes aren't actually heroes at all, but instead are villains. Specifically, the Masters of Evil team as led by Citizen V, who of course is really Baron Helmut Zemo. The plan here was to pose as heroes and basically slowly use their influence and adoration to conquer the world. A reveal made even more impactful when you consider these were the same villains who had actually almost killed members of the Avengers team in their attack on Avengers Mansion about a decade prior. And if you thought that last one was unbelievable, wait till you hear about this twist. You'd think when you've lost your face and then you've been thrown into basically a bottomless pit, that would be the end for you as a character. But apparently, that's just not the case if you're the Joker, who honestly survives a lot of stuff for being just a human guy. How did this happen? Well, it has to do with the fact that the pit the Joker falls into happens to end in a small pool of water that's really a liquid metal known as Dionysium. The same kind of liquid metal used in Lazarus pits and that is tied to Vandal Savage's powers. The Dionysium Joker fell into saved his life, healing his face and giving him somewhat of a healing factor for a while anyways. This was how Joker was able to return in the Endgame story, not to be confused with the MCU Endgame, which is a completely different thing altogether, in case you were wondering. While Joker may have some surprising tricks up his sleeve, he doesn't have anything on this next villain's surprising twist. If anyone is going to do anything to surprise us, of course it's gotta be Loki. Loki has long been known as the god of tricks, and even though he's now known as the god of stories, that doesn't mean he hasn't done some crazy stuff in the past, and that he won't do some crazy stuff in the future. I'm sure he will. One of the craziest things he's ever done? Pretend to be the Scarlet Witch. Yeah, this was around a time when Loki had actually adopted a female form and Wanda was actually missing, so both of those things made it easy for Loki to impersonate the powerful Avenger. Eventually, however, Loki's trickery was exposed and the Avengers and Young Avengers worked together to defeat the trickster god. That just goes to show you that not every hero or villain is what they seem, and the same could be said of this next villain. Hush was a mysterious character in the comics who we didn't know too much about when he first appeared. Initially, it seemed as though Jason Todd might somehow be the man under the mask. Actually, that was the original intention for this character's origin, fun fact, as we did see him as Jason, but then of course that was later kind of retconned that it was actually Clayface working at the behest of the real Hush to mess with Batman, and that's why he looked like Jason and Jason was still dead. In fact, Hush was instead someone else, not Jason, someone completely new, or well, new to us, but an old friend to Bruce Wayne, Thomas Elliot, Bruce's childhood basically best friend. His best friend also decided to kill his parents after Bruce lost his own, just so he could better relate to him. Yeah, Tommy was that guy. Basically like Bruce but more psychotic, giving even the new frenemy Ghostmaker a run for his money, to be honest. Ghostmaker has nothing on Hush, you know what I mean? Hush is nuts. Next up, another surprise reveal in regards to a villain's past relationships. In this case, not a friendship, but did you know that Apocalypse had a family? Yeah. he's got a family. This was not on my Krakoa Revelation bingo card, but then again, it was also through the Krakoan era that I learned Apocalypse had a magical origin, which I also wasn't expecting to learn about, but there you go. It was a great time of reinvention for the character of Apocalypse, especially in seeing him work alongside many mutants who for years we'd seen him actively fight against. We saw him in the entirely new role of sort of mutant savior, and I personally was waiting for him to just like reveal his true colors and turn traitor, but he didn't. In fact, we also learned by revisiting his origins the motivation for Apocalypse kinda seeking out other mutants, other than just survival of the fittest, ruling the world, blah blah blah. How he'd been from Arakko, originally Okara, when merged with the island of Krakoa, and how he'd been searching for a means to rescue his fellow mutants there, his people, who his wife, Genesis, led. Not only that, but Apocalypse and Genesis had a family together, with his children actually being his first horsemen. Literally, their names are War, Pestilence, Death, and Famine. Imagine growing up with any of those names. Imagine that being your name. Instead of me being like, hi, I'm Amanda, I'm just like, hi, I'm Pestilence. That's gonna shape you into the way you are. I'm not surprised these characters look how they do. Origin shifting is of course always surprising, whether it's for a villain or a hero. Barbados is an interesting villain in the Batman mythos, especially when you consider that the Bat God has claimed to have created Batman from basically the ground up. He's claimed to be the bat that inspired a young Bruce, and even claimed to be the one behind orchestrating the death of Bruce's parents. According to Barbados, this was all done as part of his plan to make Bruce secretly one of his own agents. Even though Bruce didn't know about this, or initially about Barbados and the Dark Multiverse's existence. Of course, Bruce refused to give in to Barbados' whims and did his best to resist him, but at the end of the day, Barbados was still extremely successful across the Dark Multiverse, even still. Speaking of villains who like to claim responsibility for evil deeds in retrospect, enter Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom and Scarlet Witch are a pair that most people never would have thought would come together, and yet they did, and they have in the past. As shocking as this couple was, what was even more surprising was how much it seemingly kinda worked. Of course, this was in large part because Scarlet Witch was suffering from memory loss at the time. However, even after Wanda got her memories restored to her, she seemingly expressed an interest in making things kinda work with Doom, or at least, you know, trying to be there for him. Like, she definitely showed mercy towards him, but after Doom attempted to betray her and was caught in the act, he instead chose to claim that none of it had been real, and even for some reason took credit for the events of basically M-Day. Still waiting on an explanation for that one in the comics, unless it's just that, as I imagine, Doom is saving face for his ego here. Like, he's like, you think you do stuff, I do everything, I'm Doom. Don't look at me, I'm sensitive. I know inside Doctor Doom is a very sensitive person. I get that from him when I read comics featuring him. Oh, Victor. Some things in comics are seemingly made to never be explained or recovered, like our next point, Jason Todd, who was once known as one of those characters that was undoubtedly always to be permanently dead, meant to remain as a permanent mark of loss for Batman. This was a guy who was never ever expected to come back to life. It used to be a sacred three that basically encompassed a sense of permanent loss in the comics. After all, in a medium where the world feels like it's constantly at stake again and again, we need to have some permanent loss here, right? For the most part in comics, loss is something we don't expect to ever see permanently because so many other characters refuse to stay dead. Heroes and villains, and in some cases even civilians alike. I mean, that's what happens when you have a hero story and it's that cyclical, you know? People die, they come back to life, they die, they come back to life. The sacred three here though was Uncle Ben, Spider-Man's long dead uncle, Bucky Barnes, Captain America's long lost sidekick, and Jason Todd, Batman's long mourned Robin. So you can imagine the surprise when Jason Todd showed back up, not just as Batman's Robin either, but instead returning as something completely new, something else, a new seeming villain, or at the very least antagonist who went by the name of Red Hood. When characters change into something we weren't expecting, it catches us off guard, and this next one is another great example of that. I think for many of us this was one of the most shocking and surprising reveals we had ever seen or read. This is because Invincible is an amazing series that really does play on the tropes and expectations we have when it comes to the superhero genre and the characters within it, and the archetypes within it. Omni-Man is a character we are introduced to in season 1 as a hero. one of the Earth's greatest heroes. Sure, he doesn't really belong to a team and prefers to stay separate from the Guardians of the Globe, but it seems irrefutable, at the beginning of episode 1 anyways, that he's, a good guy. He still helps out the Guardians and acts in the way we expect a hero to. All of our expectations and ideas of him though are shattered when we see him go up against the Guardians and basically slaughter them. Everything we thought we knew about Omni-Man is questioned in this moment, and the realization dawns on the viewer and the reader that this is not going to be your typical superhero story, which is also why we love it. That's about it. Remember to like and subscribe, and until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.